Hi everyone, so we're just getting the slides delivered now. It's kind of just in time delivery here. So just to introduce myself, Pete Harris. I work for a company called Chain Business Insights. Just wanted to maybe get a bit of, gauge the audience, if you like. Who here in the audience has heard of food? Yeah, about half of you. Yeah, okay. And has anyone here sort of had experience with food? Any of that's good, super. We're going to obviously have time for questions at the end of this, but if there are too many questions, then I'll probably do a Q&A session at the end of the conference. Probably do a live demo, thinking of making that a bit more of a beverage-oriented demo in the bar. So welcome to join me.
Test. All right, yeah, here you go.
How are we doing?
Going, and I'll put this in the computer so you
Oh, right, good, super. So I'll just, while the slides are coming up, so I'm actually, despite the accent, I'm out of Austin, Texas, not far away, probably known for its live music and maybe for its weirdness, but it will increasingly be known for its blockchain technology. Last count, more than 80 companies involved in blockchain and cryptocurrency have a presence in Austin, and we've formed an organization called the Austin Blockchain Collective to really to advocate for that community and to showcase it. So if you want to know more about that, austinblockchaincollective.com. And just pull some slides up and I'll carry on with the rest of the...
There you are. Okay, this is an older deck, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's me.
All right.
Super. Is this working now? Yes, it is. Good. Yeah. Okay. So, that works. Okay, so I'm going to spend only 10 seconds about Chain Business Insights. We're a research company focused pretty much entirely on supply chain and blockchain. We've certainly broadened out a bit into Internet of Things and AI, which we see definitely as technologies that relate to blockchain. The rest of that stuff there, you can read it on your own. I don't know whether the organisers have said they told me that they will, for any of the presenters who are happy to have their slides made available, they'll pass those on. I'm certainly happy to make my slides available. So that's, you can read it all about the company here. So let's jump into the main presentation. So I think we've heard really about the benefits of blockchain and supply chain quite a lot today. Things like logistics and transparency and insights into what's going on along the supply chain. I think it's our premise that food supply chains are extremely complex. They may be the most complex of any supply chains, and we'd probably say to you that if you can make blockchain technology work for a food supply chain, you can probably make it work for any supply chain. That made me go for other technologies as well. But we've spent, that's one of the reasons we're spending a lot of our time as a company looking at the food space. Why is it so complex? I'm not going to go through each one of these, but probably the one that jumps out at me most these days is consumers are really driving the way in which the food industry is operating. They're becoming much more demanding. They want to receive their food in different ways. They want to know a lot more about their food. They want to know what's in it, where it came from, how it was produced. And they've actually shown that sure, price is important, but for if consumers can be satisfied that a food product is of quality, they will pay more for it. So that's important for players in the food industry. couple more really important drivers which I think are going to be very keen and key to blockchain's adoption. That middle point, visibility of food-related illness, is certainly something that we're all hearing much more about these days. Throw a few stats out at you. So actually, it was only last week that the Centers for Disease Control lifted their recall on romaine lettuce, which is subject to a big E. coli outbreak. Middle of April, everyone, the CDC knew about it, made lots of headlines. The CDC knew where the lettuce came from, a city in Arizona. They didn't know where it was in the supply chain. It's taken them a month for them to determine, they say, that there's no more romaine lettuce in the supply chain that came from that city. That didn't stop 172 cases, I think, of reported of people eating lettuce. One poor soul died, and across, I think, 32 states. So, big problem. In that sort of intervening period, the whole romaine lettuce supply chain was kind of shut down. Big economic impact. There's still possibly eggs out there infected with salmonella from a farm in Illinois that recalled more than 200 million of them, and they haven't found them all yet. So maybe you want to not eat egg sandwiches tonight. It's a big problem, the food supply chain and safety aspects. Again, CDC, I think, reckoned that there were 48 million incidents related to food-related illness in the US alone. Last year, 3,000 people died. Globally, it's 1 in 10 people are affected, and 400,000 people die every year from food-related illness. So it's kind of tangible. And looking out sort of beyond the next few years, not just food safety, but sustainability is going to be increasingly an issue. The world today, there is an estimate that about 1/3 of the food that's grown and produced is wasted. It's as though you go to a supermarket, buy 3 bags of food, walk out and throw one of them straight away in the trash. Global population's rising. They reckon it's going to be 10 billion by the time of 2050. We'll need 50% more food than we've got right now, not throwing 1/3 of it away, or we're all going to die. So let's try and do something about it. And blockchain's certainly got some potential impacts here in the area of safety and sustainability. So that's scared you enough. This is just a sampling of a few of the companies that I know of working in the food related blockchain world. There are quite a few more too, but I thought I'd just throw these up. IBM, clearly a big one. It's got done quite a lot of work in this area. I've got a slide about what they're doing with Walmart coming up, but they've actually produced a service called IBM Food Trust. And got a number of customers for it. So that's one end of the scale. Actually, SAP, who are getting into the blockchain space now, have got an offering quite similar to IBM's in terms of how it's delivered. They've just announced a food-related blockchain initiative. So that's one, very big couple of very big companies. There are lots of startups working in this area. Provenance is one which we're going to cover on a slide later. Verint is a unit spun out of a company called Consensus out of Brooklyn. I believe actually tomorrow there's a lady from Consensus speaking, so won't say too much about that. They've built a generic supply chain track and trace product, which one of their applications is food. I think actually the other week they held a conference and were serving sushi at the conference, and People who were attending it could go and click on a QR code and find out exactly where that sushi came from in the ocean. So it's kind of interesting. A couple of companies also mentioned that Ambrosis and Food Guardians are doing work as well as in the food space, but also in the pharmaceutical supply chain space. And we are seeing there's definitely commonality there between the issues related to shipping drugs and shipping food. They're perishable, they need to be kept in certain conditions, etc. So we're seeing some companies definitely involved in both those verticals. So that's sort of my intro scene setting. I've got a few case studies to go to of things that are happening and beginning to happen, which I think will be sort of provide some illustration of that really this technology is really getting traction. So this is one. This is a company. There's a company called Provenance out of the UK. Been a startup, been around for maybe 3 years, probably no more than 10 people, but quite prolific. They've got about a couple of hundred customers now in the UK. Come out with a service which is essentially a software as a service. It's a mixture of kind of a blogging platform that allows players producing food or producing actually more than food products along the supply chain to kind of tell their story. That's their Provenance has got, I think, a slogan of every product has a story. And you along with the players in the supply chain telling their story, they can add into that things like, we're certified to maybe be an organic farm, and also not just write down the words we're certified. You can show the certificate from the certification authority there, which has been immutably published onto a blockchain. So it kind of provides an ecosystem that provides, if you like, trust to the end consumer, and then the end consumer can simply use a smartphone to find out a lot of information about that product. So they've been pretty successful in the UK, but they've actually got one live, at least one that I know about, a pilot which is going on in the US, and it's a live pilot with a group of poultry farmers in Arkansas who are shipping meat to the San Francisco area to be sold by a company there. And what they can do to their consumers can actually find out an awful lot about the poultry, the chicken they're buying, where it came from, what farm, how long it took to get to them, what process it went through, etc. So it provides more information and more confidence to the consumer. So this is really where this company has sort of excelled really along the way in providing this. Their service is, it's called as a software as a service. It's actually free to start up and use. And then if you want to add on features like track and trace, it's only like sort of $30 a month or something. It's not expensive. So for any company out there in the product space, doesn't have to be food. It could be other items as well, because they work in areas like apparel as well and jewelry. Any company wanting to look at blockchain technology and begin to understand what it can do, this will be a good route in. It doesn't really cost a lot of money or time and investment to do. Another company I came across quite recently, company's called Blooming Brands, you've probably not heard of because they operate via a number of different restaurant chains, people like Outback Steaks and Carrabba Italian restaurants, Fleming Steakhouse. They operate something like 1,500 restaurants around the world, a lot of them here in the US. They've became a customer a while back of a supply chain management software company based in Dallas called One Network Enterprises, who have had a kind of a software as a service based tracking system and inventory management system for I I think most of their life, since 2002 they were formed, but last year they added a blockchain element of it to really sort of add in sort of more secure chain of custody and transparency, and to manage food recalls. And Bloom & Brands is they've been a customer of One Network for 2 or 3 years now, and they've just begun to start piloting the blockchain enabled version for those kind of functions. So going to be interesting to see how they get on. But interesting that they're buying into the promise of blockchain, and it works well. They've obviously got an established relationship with a company in the supply chain management space, understood what the company can offer, and see this as an added feature that they're comfortable going with, an incumbent supplier with. So this is perhaps the big one in the food industry. Walmart, quite a large company. They've been working with IBM for almost a couple of years now. They began by running a couple of pilots, one in China related to pork, I think, and one in the US related to mangoes. They've talked quite a lot about this, but their mango pilot, they so the folklore goes, the guy who runs food safety at Walmart basically got his team to find out where a package of mangoes came from, and said, go away and find this out for me. And they came back after many sleepless nights in about 1 week, and said it came from this farm in Mexico. So he kind of used that as a benchmark. They've built a blockchain-based track trace system with essentially acting as IBM's guinea pig, if you like, and got up at their annual general meeting a few months back and demonstrated it. And the same test took just over 2 seconds. So that to them is kind of the proof of the pudding of using blockchain. It really can get a bundle of time out of the track trace process. Obviously, that doesn't happen without lots of setup work of making sure the information in the blockchain-based system is there to be used. But it's really quite a tangible example of how it is being used. Interestingly, Walmart, it's not begun to shout out too much about this, but their food safety head, Frank Yanis, has been on the conference circuit the last month or so, and he is actually saying we are now actually in production in a limited way. I think they've got about 24 products live that can be tracked in their shops right now. Interestingly, they've not kept this to themselves. From their point of view, they believe that for this kind of system to have business value, they've got to share it, and they're sharing it, including with their competitors. I was at lunch today. A gentleman asked me quite reasonably, why bother with this blockchain stuff? Why not just have a big company with lots of influence, build their own database and get everyone to use that? And Walmart tried doing that with RFID a few years ago. It didn't work so well. So they've taken a bit of a different approach with blockchain and said, well, we actually need to build an ecosystem here. So, for instance, Kroger's, who are one of their competitors, is piloting this system now. And by having multiple major retailers use it, that gives a lot more reason for upstream suppliers to be involved. So they've got upstream suppliers, food suppliers like Tyson Foods and Driscoll's, and logistics suppliers like McLean. Very interested in this now because they know it's not just working for Walmart, it's working for potentially a whole group of retailers that could be adopting the system. And IBM are sort of sitting behind it as the trusted provider of technology, and they're big blues, so they can make that kind of claim, can't they? So that's interesting. As we heard earlier with IBM and Maersk, the IBM model with blockchain, especially in supply chains, is really to sort of find a big player with the positioning and the business in the industry contacts and work with them. So Walmart, Maersk, they're doing one now in the jewelry supply chain as well. So couple more. This is a little. The actual application is a somewhat sort of me too compared to some of the others we've seen. Carrefour, a large French retailer with shops, stores around the world. Interesting. One thing about this example is they actually have one of their chickens which they view as iconic. They sell 1 million of these every year, and they've actually now got live blockchain usage of this for shoppers in France wanting to know more about where those iconic chickens came from, and they are expanding out their use of blockchain to a number of other food products. And my final slide, this is an interesting one. Company out of Denver, Colorado called Bex360 are kind of inventing what they call the Coinstar for coffee. This is really sort of farm to cup. They've built sort of machines which they put into farms. They've got them out in coffee producers in Uganda and Ethiopia right now. And the way it works is, a coffee farmer comes along, actually pours their, I think, coffee cherries or berries, are they at that stage, into the unit, which uses a mixture of kind of machine vision and AI technology. It analyzes what it sees, decides what they are worth, and essentially prints out something to the farmer saying, "We will pay you this much for for this coffee. Do you want to accept?" If the farmer says yes, I'll sell you them, they get paid pretty much instantly with a cryptocurrency called Stellar. And then what happens is, a truck comes along, collects the coffee beans. They go through the whole process. They're tracked and traced using a blockchain-based system right through to essentially the end consumer. There's now a couple of 2 or 3, I think, sort of major coffee distributors here in the US who distribute to places like Whole Foods and Blue Bowl beginning to use this system. So it's an interesting example of how blockchain is bridging, major retailers here like Whole Foods with small holdings, on the other side of the ocean. So, with that, happy to take questions. We produced a research report on food about a year ago. We're coming out with a new one, an updated one this year. Coming out with an ebook too, I think, looking at how small holding farms are going to be using blockchain and other technologies in their supply chain. Any questions? Happy to take them. As I say, we'll be around later as well. And I say, these slides should be available from the organizer, but if you don't get them, then you email me for them for sure. So, yep.
Are there any questions? Any questions in the room? Okay, awesome. Thank you for your time.
All right.
Appreciate it. That was awesome.
More questions at the bar later. Thanks.